Alright, so I'll weigh in on this issue. There's been talk on WorldNet Daily and Newsmax about a ban on internet gun talk, right? So there's a lot of people that want to discuss guns, weapons, firearms on the internet. A lot of martial artists want to discuss martial arts on the internet instead of going to a dojo. Go figure. And I gotta admit, I've been caught doing that. You know, instead of working out, I'll sit there and talk about martial arts online. And somebody posted a thing against somebody else in one of the forums on that. And I was like, oh crap, I'm doing the same thing. I'm talking without going to the dojo. And I kind of put myself on check on that. That's why I just don't do videos on martial arts. I don't want it to get out there. I have vulnerabilities with martial arts because I'm not fully trained. Okay, I've practiced in about 4 or 5 different martial arts, never mastered any of them, but I know a few moves out of them. And the thing is, if I were to disclose all of my strengths and weaknesses in martial arts, then somebody could kick my ass. And how do I know that happens? Because I've done that with other people. Okay, I've been one of those guys that when somebody was talking a little too much shit, I would like find some way of finding them. And one of the things that would happen is I'll watch them train. Okay, I've beaten guys and stuff where I'll watch them train, I'll watch them fight, I'll figure it out. Hey, I can beat most highly skilled martial artists. I can beat in one fight if I can watch them train. If I can watch this guy do his thing. Sometimes I hover around their martial arts school, watch them. I read them long enough, I'm going to figure out what the weakness is, and I can be like, okay, here's how I can take this guy. And I did that with people in the military. You know, I was a skinny, nerdy, goofy guy, and I got picked on a fair amount, but I knew just enough that I'd watch the tough guys for a while. And then I'd let them pick on me a little bit, just enough, and then I figured out how to take them. But I couldn't do it all the time. And that's one of the things that happens in the weapons world on a bigger scale, between nations, between people who would fight a nation state, is they want to learn how you train, and want to learn how what your capabilities, strengths, weaknesses, and capabilities are. I remember there was a TV series on Sci-Fi Channel a few years ago called Taken, and it was a very interesting speech given by like the bad guy colonel. And he said, hey, we won World War II through secrets, through learning the enemy's secrets and keeping ours. And you know, there's certain aspects of that that happen with weapon capabilities, technicalities, specifications, things like that. Every weapon system has its weaknesses. Every combat arms mix, when you're trying to outfit an infantry squad or a tactical team of one kind or another, you're going to have to make compromises one way or another. There was an interesting game a few years ago called Rainbow Six, where you would equip your team. There's a fairly decent AI that runs those teams, but if you went heavily with your weapons one way, then you lose other capabilities, just because, you know, there's this constant game of rock, paper, scissors. And for those reasons, certain weapon limitations and specifications were probably, it's best if they not get out in the public. Now, ITAR deals with international small arms, not sporting guns. So if there's a sporting version of a particular weapon, it doesn't fall under ITAR. If something's kind of a dual purpose thing, there's exceptions. You can drive a Mack truck through. Mack trucks are driven through those exceptions all the time. For example, on Magpul plastic, okay, I've got a mix of authentic and Chinese-made accessories on some of my airsoft guns. Okay, I think I've got a real Knights rail system on my Airsoft M4, and then I've got a Magpul aftermarket stock on there, and then sitting in a box somewhere is another Magpul stock that's a real deal. They mix and match, but they'll be very clear that the PTS stuff is the international non-ITAR regulated stuff. But when you're talking about spreading specifications around, you know, there's been some people prosecuted. There was a guy prosecuted here in the Portland, Oregon area, was a National Guardsman. He had converted to Islam and was publishing on some jihadi website in English and identifying himself as a member of the U.S. military. He starts publishing target data on the M1 Abrams tank because it was something he dealt with. In fact, I don't think he even dealt with those things. There's no tanker units in National Guard around here that I know of. I think it was his previous active duty time. So, you know, he wants to help his Muslim brothers out by publishing the data and thinks that he's protected by free speech to publish information about, you know, strengths and weaknesses on U.S. weapons to what he knew was the enemy. And he got prosecuted for that. Now, there's other people who would go into training scenarios. I've discussed training scenarios and stuff because I trained against the M1 Abrams, and so I'd say, yeah, we snuck around this way, snuck around that way, he got us on thermal, and then we had a problem, and I didn't know they could engage at that longer distance, and, you know, we kind of went back and forth the internet discussion. But now I realize some of those discussions maybe you know, ought to be kept offline. And we're going to reach into a reality where tradecraft matters, okay? If you really need technical specifications for certain weapons, it's going to become a matter of tradecraft, not free speech. And so you can campaign for your right to talk about guns or whatever, if it's even a real threat, which I don't think it is. But the reality is that if you're going to talk about heavier stuff, then you probably need to brush up on your tradecraft with communication, and not necessarily disclose all of that information publicly. You might notice in the background here is a bookshelf with some of the things that I've either involved with now or involved myself with in the past. Most of it's books, how-to books on construction and handyman-related stuff that's related to my employment. One of those is a famous or infamous, depending on how you look at it, 5-35 engineer manual. I keep that as a souvenir of sorts because I was a combat engineer for a long time. You'll go through my channel, I might talk a little bit about this and that. I don't have how-to stuff on improvised weapons of mass destruction, okay? There's no reason I see to put that on YouTube. A few guys have published some borderline stuff, and I just said, listen, I don't think this is really a public consumption thing. And if you think you have a right to do it, well, you know, look at your tradecraft, look at your organizations you associate with. It's not supposed to be public. If somebody's transmitting that information internationally, okay, to what end and to what purpose? Because I don't think being able to say, well, I want to be a famous and smart guy too, and I worked with this type of stuff and that type of stuff, so I'm going to fill in all the blanks on the capabilities of a particular aircraft that's not in Jane's infantry weapons. Of course you don't fucking do that, okay? Of course not. But whether or not this thing is shutting down, like everybody talking about what kind of scope or what kind of rifle they like, or telling some war stories from Iraq, I would have to see an announcement from somebody on the enforcement side of this before I'm going to take the interpretation of people at WorldNet Daily or Newsmax on this stuff, because, you know, it's possible to take relatively solid information and then twist the interpretation to create an intelligence product which is false. And I start to see this when somebody wants to harp on about, oh, there's ground attacks on U.S. citizens. Okay, Mark Kornke or any of the people that were maybe early game Patriot movement. No, we're talking about some guy who was running half of Al Qaeda. Okay, I kind of understand that concept. Okay, if you've pulled off a bunch of successful terrorist incidents, guess what? Somebody's going to be after you. You kind of understand the game, right? Okay, if you think that pulling off a bunch of successful terrorist attacks is not going to result in retaliation on your family, get a fucking guess. I mean, come on. You know how that, if you don't like the game, don't play.